part of that. My mother never flew down at short notice to help when both I and my husband had to travel. It was my mother-in-law who came. And let us not forget that there is an institution of a mother-in-law which is not as characteristically nasty. And I'm not just playing to your mother-in-law's gallery here. And we are all going to be future mother-in-laws, I hope, anyway, if we aren't already. And that we have a role to play in the way we support our daughter-in-laws. So that 50%, or however is measured. See, with the husband, it's always the 50%. I mean, even today I have a negotiation. You haven't done this, you haven't done that, why am I having to do this? You know, all of that. That goes on for a lifetime, no matter how hard I try. Don't tell you I told him. But there is that other family, you know, sisters, mothers, mother-in-laws, which all comes in, which enables us to go ahead. So we have to manage that. You're not going to be able to do it on your own. And if you're a poor manager at home, and if you're not being able to rally the troops, which is everyone and anyone who helps you, you know, whether it's your bai, your ayah, your mother-in-law, your sister, your friends, it is about managing your time in a way that allows you to go out and do what you have to do. And it's a fact of life. If you manage it poorly, you're stuck. And if you're unfortunate that you didn't marry right and you don't have the support therein, well, tough luck. So it is, but it does require, I think, planning, thinking. I mean, to give you an example, I would plan, if I were traveling, which I did a lot of, I would pack my bags like a week in advance, to the point I'd almost forgotten what I'd packed, to where I was going, to plan for every contingency. So that I planned for every bad event as well as I could, so that I was not struggling at the last minute. So you just learn to, you know, manage through this, manage through planning. It's all about time management. It's not easy, but it's very doable. It's very doable if you just get yourself into a structured way of working, and, you know, aren't always at 6s and 7s. And of course, to have the support around you. So yes, society is changing. Yes, I think organizations are far more friendly to women and women's needs right now. But I think the old equations in terms of how we equate with people around us and societies around us and the people immediately around us change only as much as you work on ensuring that they change. They aren't going to happen overnight, no matter who you marry, because it will require some restructuring and rethinking, particularly when events like a child comes, and then if you've got a sick child, a sick parent, there are duties to be done, and those duties have to be divided. And you can't say, I'm working and therefore not going to do that either. So you have to do your heavy lifting in these situations as well. So how you manage that is very doable, but not easy.
So actually, quite a few of these, 60, 70 odd numbers, the top women who are in India, whether in the private sector or in the public sector, with the recent one being Usha Sangwan and Arundhati Bhattacharya joining the group. So many of them have been, heard saying that if women have to be successful in the cutthroat, competitive corporate world, the way it exists today, where it really doesn't distinguish this, there is no differentiation between a man and a woman. It is very demanding, it is very taxing. So many of them have been said to, the statement they made is that a woman has to pack a 48 hours in a 24-hour workday, which probably may not be a very, and you have to be really tough to manage that. And looking at the kind of achievements and the kind of academic credentials, also people like Naina or Manisha, who's also throughout a gold medalist, I think it takes a whole lot, a toll on women to sort of surge ahead in their careers. So I want to know, Dipali, that do you think in such a scenario, if there is somebody who's not as tough, who's not probably as brilliant, to just cruise through the corporate paths like this, do you think entrepreneurship is a much better option for women to go for? And probably also many women who may not be really lucky with the spouses, it's not in your hands. So do you think that entrepreneurship is one medium through which gradually over a period of time, you can probably help to bring that change in your spouse if you're not lucky to get a support, and it comes with that mindset? Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, I think that could be a way forward, definitely. And I mean, I'll just quote a small example. When you're talking about entrepreneurship, I think it also starts from the bottom strata of the society and above. I mean, you can talk about entrepreneurship where people like us in our part of the world would be they could. I mean, if they get the support, they could become entrepreneurs. Or if they don't get the support, they can work from home. But let's also not forget, around 40 to 50% of the women are in the tier 2 and the tier 3 parts of our country. And I think they need that kind of an empowerment and that support to translate into kind of doing something. I think that's very, very important. And I think if we can do that, that will be very, very key to the success of what we do in our country. That is one thing. I agree with you that entrepreneurship is important, and that could be a way forward to take your own independent decisions. But I think now there's a way of doing things. The technologies have advanced. Now there's a way of looking at things as crowdsourcing. I mean, if you want to do things, you can create beautiful presentations by sourcing. I mean, at night, and they'll work overnight and do something. So I think the world has opened up. I mean, from the aspects that if you can create beautiful designs, you can do anything. The world is your play. I mean, you have the exposure to the world through crowdsourcing. You can do entrepreneurship. You can do a whole lot of things. I think Sonia, there are few aspects. I mean, if you think about support, I think again reinstate, it's all on you how you take it forward. Because if we want, as women, we can complain that we don't have time, we can't do this. But it's all about, as Naina also said, and Manisha, it's all about multitasking, balancing yourself. And also, if you can do things, people will see that determination, and you're bound to get the support from your people, the team around you. I mean, I have these women working in Anjar, where I have these vocational centers, 7 centers which I run. Every woman is earning 5,000 and beyond, like 12,000 rupees. And I'm seeing to that if they can earn 20,000. I see that smile. But they come for those 6 hours or 5 hours after cooking food, and then they go back and do their chores again. So it's all on you. It's all on what you want to do. 48 hours again, but it's a determination to do what you want to do.
So now, looking at the way, as Dipali just pointed out, the technology is changing, and which puts a lot of power in the hands of individuals to do something if they want. So, do you think, Naina, how do you visualize the future for women, for dynamic, entrepreneurial women who have that burning desire within them to do something for themselves, for their own happiness? It's not to prove to anyone, but just work gives a lot of happiness to people, and they want to achieve something. So do you think that just like today it is, you really don't think much about the fact that most girls go to schools, they acquire an education. We don't even put our mind to it, it's taken as accepted. That's the thing to do. But today, sitting here, we are talking about the possibility of girls continuing to be in the workforce and not get relegated to the background, to the invisible, unsung roles of just being, taking care of children, which is of course very gratifying, which is very fulfilling. But somewhere, if you have educational qualifications, you have worked hard, and you don't get that intellectual stimulation, that kind of work environment, then there is something that is dying inside you. So do you visualize the future where, with the technology at our disposal, with organizations probably becoming more open to flexible working hours, that there may come a time where women have no reason to complain that there is no work. There is so much, plenty of work available for the ones who want to do, that they can put in that and rise to whatever level they want. Do you think this is the future, and if so, how do you extrapolate it?
Yeah. I think, Sonia, there are 2 questions here, and there are 2 different models. One which, in fact, you've asked, which is on the whole question of entrepreneurship, which I think does give a little more flexibility. I should, of course, caveat that by saying that there are many examples, and I've heard a few people come by and say how it's very difficult to get loans, for example. Banks may not accept the credibility today of a woman-led entrepreneurial setup, as easily as they might like. And I say as easily as they might like because frankly banks don't accept startups that are entrepreneurs that are guys either. You're a startup, man or woman. So it may not be just that they don't think that you're not equipped as a woman. And of course there are issues therefore around credibility, and if you're a woman who's never done a business before, then that becomes that much harder. And hence, you've seen the government's efforts to now start a women's bank, the whole purpose of being able to provide loans to women, make it easier. I mean, these are recognitions of the fact that it's not working as smoothly as it should. But having said that, the whole model around entrepreneurship is really that success begets success. So for whether you're a guy or a woman, when you're starting up your business, that first bit of capital, whether equity or otherwise, the first loans are hard to come by. As you begin to succeed, it becomes easier and easier. And I think there are many amongst you, and FICCI Flow has had exhibitions of some of the talent that one has been able to see, at least in my year as president, of women, many amongst you today, who have set up businesses very successfully. And it is for you to show the way, what worked, what didn't, in terms of the absolute issues that you faced. And I'm sure many of you had support from family or capital, family capital behind you as you started, but that's not an open door. You've had to prove your way as you go along. So I don't think we should get disheartened that women are discriminated against. I think there is some truth to that, but it isn't like it is a universal problem. Men face this too in startups. The corporate world is somewhat different, and different corporates are different. So we have seen today in banking, is wonderful to hear that it's a given, no problem. I might tell you we still work quite hard in our companies to ensure that it's no problem. The women in the organization do fall away. We start with a recruiting body of maybe even 45-50% women that come in, but it drops off to 30, and at the senior levels it drops down to 15 and 10. So it's still an issue. We still have to work at it. But it is good to hear that clearly in the banking sector women have made it. We have the largest number of women CEOs in any country in terms of percentages today of large banks. It's pretty phenomenal. India is really blazing a trail there. But we've got huge gaps in the manufacturing sector, even in marketing companies, where we clearly have to do a lot of work. So I think the models are different. Each has to find their own. I think entrepreneurship in itself is a phenomenal space because you can, and there are women that are running companies that are working on technologies for the bottom of the pyramid. There are women that are running not-for-profits that are larger than companies because of the sheer number of people that they influence or manage. And there are women who have full-scale businesses, maybe small but running from home. All of these are very, very acceptable and doable. And I think what we aren't doing enough of is showcasing what is working. So women can learn from each other. So-and-so started a business in such and such way, and this is what he or she is doing. So each of you that is doing something, however small, is a role model for someone else. And I think it's very important to get those cases and examples out. And I know that some of you are working on making sure that we can showcase these, but those are important. Because not everyone aspires to go join a bank, and nor do you have to. I think you should just follow what you think you are comfortable in, and do it well, do it with dedication. Don't give up when things are down. We all face ups and downs. Find your way around it. Go out, get advice. Don't be ashamed to consult others and get back on track.
So yeah, that I think while we watch such regressive television channels, which many of us actually don't watch, which is horrifying for the psyche of women. So probably India can do really well with a all women's channel, which is doing work on lines of FICCI for women empowerment, because television is the easiest medium where you don't feel shy. People come and tell you that you can do this. You don't have to go to people. So I guess that if India has to see that next big bang of women coming into the workforce, I don't know, that just was one.
I actually just wanted to, I don't know how many of you have actually seen a new serial which has started on Doordarshan, Saturdays and Sundays at 7 o'clock, called Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon. and it's now become the third highest TRPs in terms of serials. And it's really phenomenal. This has been actually, it was initiated through a not-for-profit organization called Population India, and it's been done by well-known directors, where the protagonist there is a working woman. She's a doctor, and she's got a very supportive husband. So it's not the traditional sort of husband at loggerheads with working woman sort of style, and a very supportive family. And it's a very real. A woman who's come from a small town, but is working in Bombay, and these are very real life characters, and it's being done in a somewhat dramatic way so that it's appealing to a viewership. But it's clearly achieving results, and I think you're right. We do have to begin to change that dialogue, but do it in a way that it's not preachy and boring.
Exactly.
That it has a feel.
Which is kind of a negative connotation normally Doordarshan gives, unfortunately. So people want to run away from preaching. And so I think before we go on to final note from the panelists about how we can take this into a progressive direction and get the right messages across, because I think life otherwise through normal TV programming and all is, as it is, full of very negative kind of messages which go out in the society for right or wrong. I don't know whether those kind of news items should be brought, but I think it has a very demoralizing effect related to women's security issues and to them coming out and wanting to achieve their full potential. So do you think, I think one last question which I want to ask, Manisha, do you think that if we have quota system like Norway has achieved a lot, where they mandated 40% of the women to be on boards should be women. France and Spain are very soon going to achieve that. They are likely to achieve those targets soon. So do you think quota system is going to help get more women forward?
So I think, Sonia, if you'd asked me this question 15 years ago, I would have given a very different answer. I would have said absolutely not. Everyone should be judged for what they are, and gender or any other diversity rules should not be a part of a criteria. But I've noticed in the last 15 years, like all of us, that I think women need that extra encouragement. We are making that extra effort, but the ecosystem around us needs to encourage us. And today my answer would be yes. I think it's important because, as for all the reasons that were outlined earlier, I think women on the board make a difference. I recall 4 years ago, I was presenting a large acquisition to a big board in Bombay, and finally the chairman asked, it was one of those things which wasn't really immediately making sense, but long term was accretive, etc. So the chairman asked me, what do I think about this acquisition, hand on heart, forget the my role as a banker, and I started by saying, I feel, and I was going to say, and he cut me short and he said, young lady, there's no feel in our boards, right? So he was so upset that I would think about bringing feelings, and frankly, in organizations where we are all working 18-hour days, we have such tough work lives, I think, you do bring your personal lives to work. It's important to have a dialogue on the human aspect of every action that the board takes. So yes, I think if I believe that it's important to get women onto boards, and I believe that in industries such as manufacturing, there's still a long way for women to come, then I think initially a quota is not a bad thing. But I think then it's imperative for women to take it forward. We should check in for maybe the wrong reasons because there was a quota, but we must stay on for the right reasons. Then it's up to us to prove our worth, bring a differentiating fact. We just don't come there because the cookies are good, or it's a break from all the needs at home. But actually make a difference. And your example, Norway, where there are women on boards of Fortune 500 companies where women are on board. You see those companies are doing very well. They, the dialogue on environment, on social issues, on employee issues, human issues is much better. And after all, we progress only if the socio progresses with the economic. You can't just have a great economic dialogue and the socio lagging behind.
So I think I just, even though it is an all women forum, I just want to put in a word for men also. So, and I'll put it to the veteran who's been there, who's seen it, and who possibly can, comment on this, having so many large number of employees, that she's head of. So now, do you think, Naina, the narrative actually has to change from women-friendly to family-friendly? Because effectively, if you look at, men are also very highly, they face a lot of work pressure and they're not at ease. And if they are not at ease, the counterparts are not going to be ease. So if women have to be happy, probably we have to have family-friendly policies and come out of that mode which is a cutthroat, no time for family kind of. So which concessions be applicable to men as well and not just women, because overall it is going to improve the lot of women because of a better family life.
And it's a good point. I should tell you that every policy that comes in on flexi hours or whatever is there for men and women. No policy should come in just for women. And in fact, when we first introduced this into the bank, in fact, I was CEO of the bank at the time, there were many disbelievers because in fact, the men in the company had to put the plans into place. If a woman came often to a male manager and said she wanted to avail of flexi hours, what was his reaction going to be? Was it going to put her off? Was it going to try to dissuade her? Was he going to try and get rid of her from the team because he didn't want this part in, part out player in his team? So it was very important to socialize this within the whole company. And interestingly, the first take-up that happened, 60% were men. There were men who wanted to go off and study, men who wanted to look after sick parents, who wanted to go off and run an NGO. And the highest profile, in fact, the highest level person who took this was my head of risk, which Manisha, you will recognize is a role that is very difficult to come by. He'd been running his not-for-profit from near Udaipur, where he hails from, and he wanted to go back and give all his time there. And we persuaded him, well, do 6 months there, 6 months with us. So it was a win-win. So